At the Adamski Foundation, thank you for your interest in our extraordinary UFO materials and the continuing assortment of developing video series relating to George Adamski and the Steckling family. The following sections include recent travel sequences to the famous contact location, approximately 10.2 miles northward on Highway 177 out of Desert Center towards the base of the Coxcomb Mountains. Also embedded within this video is a combination of the original, one of the kind, 1952 George Adamski UFO archival footage. As you can see, Desert Center is mainly abandoned, but has some small local communities, an old Army airfield now converted into a racetrack, and several solar power installations in an effort to try to revitalize the area and the community. As you travel down the road on the left hand side, you can see the outline and silhouette of the Coxcomb Mountains, where the historical UFO contact occurred. The military and Project Blue Book reports occur and concur with the UFO sightings over the Desert Center region at the date and time of the Adamski and the six witnesses. Remember that military observations are taken in Zulu time, so that means that 2200 Zulu or 2000 Zulu is about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the same time as the six witnesses reported it. We now come up upon the Project Blue Book reports and the military reports of the spacecraft at the same area at the same time. And you can see that it was witnessed by our own officials, and also the witnesses said that they were at least a large contingent, maybe a dozen military aircraft that were filming the entire sequence during the event. These are original archival photos from 1952. The six witnesses stopped along the highway, and you can see the many UFOs that were above and behind the car, the cylindrical cigar ship, and about half a dozen saucer or round opaque objects as well, circled in the red. This was just on one side of the road. On the other side of the road was a whole set more, as you can see by the red arrows, two, four, six, at least six, half a dozen. The enlargements are showing you these craft as well. And as you can see at the very top, a little cylindrical device, which is a mothership or carrier craft. And once the negative is enlarged, you can see the larger craft as it appears, and also the saucer craft dropping down from underneath the belly that shows in the next sequence. And that is the craft that came down and landed, and the ET came out and had contact with George Adamski. These are some of the pictures set up by the wide viewfinder camera, basically set on an infinity in order to take pictures of these craft in that particular area. This is an artist's rendition by E.T. The late E.T. was a very good friend of ours and did some very fine work. This describes that the E.T. visitor asked for the glass emulsion plate in George's pocket, which was given to him and was taken by him when he flew off. And then 3 weeks later, on December 13th of 1952, the craft flew over the Palomar Gardens property, about 2 hours away from Desert Center, and dropped a package. And inside the package was the emulsion plate with these symbols carved on it, including the microfilm on top of it. This shows the silhouette of the person walking down the gravel valley, and then the close up of that person. The extraterrestrial looks like you and me, entirely human beings. And also a full-fledged painting done professionally by the description of the witnesses to show what this particular individual looked like, with 5'7", kind of blondish hair, chestnut Mediterranean features, and light green blue eyes. This area now is stopped at the contact site that's across the street for parking. This is our highway foundation sign that we do to take care of the highway in that area and provide a historical marker. Gives you a Google aerial view of the same area. George revisited the area some years later in the late 50s, early 60s. You can see that there are a number of washed out runoff beds, moisture, and also a small indentation of tire tracks of people who, over the decades, have driven up to that area. It is BLM, or Bureau of Land Management land, and they don't particularly care for that. But you can walk up there, and I had a number of friends and individuals who have camped in that area over the specific date of November 20th as sort of a commemorative honoring of what occurred. You can see the two black rocks in the middle of the frame, and then you will get a reversal view of that. That is where the extraterrestrial stood next to it and left the imprints of his footprints, his shoes, in the soft desert sand. Not any different than if you buy expensive tennis shoes, and each one has different kind of designs on the bottom, and they leave imprints into the sand as well. The only difference is that with these particular footprints, it holds the key to the electromagnetic propulsion of the spacecraft in conjunction with the symbols that were given to George on the plate, and another set of symbols that was discovered in the Brazilian jungle almost 10 years later by a professor of anthropology, Marcel Homais, dated to be 10 to 30,000 years old. Here's the picture of several of the witnesses as George Hunt Williamson is pouring the plaster cast solution in there in order to make the footprints. There were two footprints made, sets of them. One George kept, the other one was given to Lord Desmond Leslie, and were displayed in his castle, Castle Leslie, in the Irish estate for a number of years, but have since been sequestered and locked up in storage. The event was widely publicized, as you can see from the local newspapers, the Oceanside Blade Tribune, the Phoenix Gazette. So it was not something that was kept secret or submitted into submission. This is the Mount Palomar property of Palomar Gardens. This is how it looks today. We recently had a symposium there in November. This is an animation done by Renee Olson to give people an idea of how that scout came in over the trees into this gap area that's here and then hovered between the trees at about 20-25 feet because you can see tree level is still above. The hatch opened up, the package was dropped, and inside was the glass plate. The glass plate then had these symbols on them. But the curious thing is that Marcel Homé, Professor Homé, an anthropologist in the Brazilian jungle, Piedra Pentada, found exactly 80% or more the same symbols, showing that they were about 10 to 30,000 years old and that ancient societies had far greater technological abilities and understanding than we gave them credit for. This is a view that gives you from the side of which the space person stood towards the open valley and the mountains on the side. And when you look then at the pictures that you've seen before, then you can see that it sits exactly at the same place. A cute little carving on the rock said Adamski is back. Well, that's a bit of a misnomer. He may be back in thought and understanding, but as far as the person is concerned, he has moved on to far greater progressive lifetimes and expression, and will no longer be revisiting this particular planet. Again, his job is done, and I'm sure he's extraordinarily happy that it is because it was not an easy time trying to educate the people. Not much has changed over 70, 75 years, as one would expect. There's millions and tens of millions of miles and acreage of open desert in the southwest region. So you can see here the gravel pit and construction area that surprisingly is directly across the street from this particular location. So I wonder if somebody set that there on purpose. And then you go into the drone footage, which gives you a nice little aerial view of the entire location. The end of the series will show you a couple of books. One's called Inside the Spaceships, which we have combined two books into one. Flying Saucers Have Landed, the original book of 1953, and Inside the Spaceships of 1955. Then Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery 2 was originally published in 1961 as Flying Saucers Farewell, and we revised it in 2015 and added about 55 pages to it and a huge selection of documentation, pictures, and all kinds of authentic materials to uh, help bolster the Adamski case. Letters from people like Frank Edwards, who wrote Flying Saucer Serious Business, and Major Kehoe. It was a letter to Albert Einstein. So, for all the people who were publicly against George in order to maintain their reputation, secretively they communicated with him all the time and got a great deal of information from him. So, this is all things to consider when you start looking into the truth and the actual authentic story of George Adamski. We hope this video helps to clarify a few things and also give you a very nice pictorial of the location and scenery of events that occurred then. Thank you very much.